You don't hate hard work. You don't lack discipline, but something about waking up for a job day after day feels like it's draining something essential from you, and no amount of sleep, coffee, or career advice seems to fix it. It's more than boredom, more than burnout. It's a deeper kind of disconnection, like your soul is quietly slipping away while the rest of you plays along. And here's the part no one talks about. You know that this feeling isn't just a phase. It's not something you can just put up with for a little longer and it will go away. It's a message. Something deep in you no longer wants to be numb, no longer wants to fit in. And if you're watching this channel, let's be honest, you're probably not normal. The ordinary never felt right. The rules, the roles, the repetition. Something in you has always pulled away from all this. And that's not a flaw. Far from it. That's a gift. And I'm really glad that you're here. This video is not a rant about capitalism, and it's not a motivational speech. It's an exploration of why certain people simply can't survive the modern workplace without something inside them beginning to collapse. And it's an invitation to consider what your discomfort might actually mean, because the system was built with a specific purpose: to shape human beings into predictable parts of a machine. And if you're wired for awareness, sensitivity, or inner growth, you might be fundamentally incompatible with that machine. We're going to trace the roots of that mismatch, historically, psychologically, and spiritually. And by the end, you may realize you're not lazy and you're not broken. You're remembering something the system was designed to make you forget. If you've ever felt like this world isn't built for you, you're definitely not alone. And if you like exploring what the world tries to silence, subscribe. You've found your people. Long before you felt the dread of another Monday, before your body learned to tense at the sound of an alarm clock, this system had already chosen its shape. It was all engineered. During the Industrial Revolution, the goal wasn't fulfillment or purpose. It was efficiency, predictability, obedience. Factories needed workers who moved in sync with machines, so society taught people to move in sync with clocks. You weren't meant to just flow with it, you were meant to fit. Time became something to measure, schedule, and sell. Even schools were redesigned to train future employees. Sit still, follow instructions, ask permission, wait for bells. Discipline became the foundation of education instead of curiosity. Order instead of aliveness became the foundation of labor. Michel Foucault once described this transformation as docile bodies. Humans were conditioned not through force, but through subtle architecture. Walls, bells, desks, uniforms, all carefully arranged to produce conformity without resistance. And it worked. Even now, most jobs don't require your whole self. They require a version of you, efficient, agreeable, detached from rhythm, instinct, and deep emotional truth. You learn to segment your soul, one face for the meeting, another for the mirror. You shrink the sacred into a lunch break. But here's the quiet rebellion. Some people can't shrink anymore. Not because they're fragile, but because their inner world has outgrown the roles. You don't break in the system because it's failing. You break because it's doing exactly what it was designed to do, turning human beings into predictable components. And some souls just won't stay mechanical. Modern work was never designed for emotional presence, for spiritual inquiry, or for creative chaos. It rewards consistency, not consciousness. And when consciousness begins to expand, when the questions get louder, when the rituals of pretending start to sting, the machine doesn't bend, it resists. It labels your resistance as laziness, entitlement, instability. But beneath those labels, there's a quieter truth. You were built for movement, for mystery, for meaning. And deep down, the system knows that. That's why it teaches you to numb, to see your exhaustion as a badge, to confuse survival with success. Because if you ever pause long enough to feel what's really happening inside you, you might walk away. So if you've ever wondered why others can navigate this world of deadlines and meetings without falling apart, while you feel like your soul is suffocating, you're not weak. You're simply tuned to something this system never planned for: awareness. Because once you realize the structure wasn't made to nourish you, only to use you, you stop trying to bloom inside it. And that's when you notice that something in you is changing. At first, it feels like burnout. You're tired more often, small tasks feel heavy, the meetings blur. But underneath the surface, something stranger is happening because the job didn't suddenly get worse. Your perception did something the system never accounted for. It expanded. This is the moment awareness begins to outgrow the cage. For years, you could endure the routine, maybe even excel in it. You hit deadlines. You smiled at the right times. You got good at being the version of yourself the system rewarded. But now, something's cracking. A voice, barely audible, whispering, "This isn't it." From the outside, you're functioning, but inside, your body is registering threat in a sterile environment. Neuroscience calls it predictive processing. Your brain constantly models the world, anticipating patterns to minimize surprise. When the environment becomes too monotonous, too devoid of meaning, your system begins to dull itself to survive. But awareness has its own agenda, and when it starts to rise, it doesn't ask permission. What once felt like security now feels like suffocation. Your body recoils from artificial light. Your spirit aches at meaningless tasks. Even the sound of a Slack notification can feel like an electric jolt to your nervous system. You begin to feel split, part of you still performing, another part slowly slipping away. This isn't just psychological fatigue, it's spiritual friction. Because consciousness, by its nature, wants to grow, and systems, by their nature, want to stabilize. So when the soul stretches, the structure constricts, and the space between them becomes unbearable. This is why burnout often hits high performers first. Because they've mastered the performance so completely, there's nothing left to master. They've outgrown the game. And once you see the game, you can't unsee it. Spiritual traditions speak of this moment as the first death, the end of unconscious living. Is not dramatic or loud, just a quiet impossibility to keep pretending. At work, you notice how people talk without listening, how meetings cycle without purpose, how your own energy vanishes the moment you walk through the door. It's not that you're broken, it's that your awareness no longer fits the mold. And so the pressure builds, not from outside deadlines, but from the inside where truth is beginning to rise. You may try to override it, to meditate more, optimize more, find meaning in smaller tasks. But the truth doesn't shrink, it waits, patiently, for you to stop shrinking too. This discomfort isn't the end of your capacity, it's the beginning of your clarity. And you're not becoming dysfunctional, you're becoming incompatible with illusion, with repetition, with living half asleep. And that incompatibility, it's sacred, you're lucky. Because the cage wasn't just around you, it was inside you. And now something in you, call it awareness, call it soul, is refusing to be small. This is the spiritual crisis modern systems can't diagnose. A quiet truth waking up in a place built for sleep. Maybe you've called it laziness. Maybe you've blamed yourself for the heaviness, the scattered mind, the way even simple tasks feel impossible. You've stared at the screen, the inbox, the calendar, and wondered why you can't just do it like everyone else seems to. But what if you're not broken? What if this collapse you keep fighting isn't dysfunction at all, but a refusal so deep, so old, so sacred, that your mind can't name it, but your body remembers? Because here's the truth no one says aloud in meetings or performance reviews. There's a kind of fatigue that doesn't come from overwork. It comes from falseness, from having to silence your intuition, from smiling when you feel numb, from pouring your life force into something that doesn't recognize it as life. It's not that you lack motivation, it's that your soul has stopped consenting. You disassociate during calls. You forget entire weeks. You feel a strange grief at the thought of doing this forever. Because a part of you knows this is not where you're meant to be. And still, you blame yourself. You call it failure. You carry the guilt like a secret. But what if the guilt isn't yours? What if it belongs to a system that taught you to equate worth with productivity? Presence with performance? The philosopher Gurdjieff called it the false personality, the mask we wear to survive, to function, to be accepted. And he warned, the moment you begin to wake up, the mask starts to crack. Because all that performance is no longer sustainable. Krishnamurti spoke of it too. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Maybe your inability to keep adjusting is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of health returning. This is remembrance, not of facts or ideas, but of yourself. The version of you that existed before you were told who to become, before the metrics, before the meetings, before usefulness replaced aliveness. So if you feel like you're falling apart inside a role you used to handle, pause. Witness what's shifting. You're remembering. And the soul, once it begins to remember, doesn't return to pretending. It doesn't begin with a vision or a sudden enlightenment. It begins with something quieter. You just stop caring the way you used to. The numbers, the meetings, the praise, they still pass through your life, but they no longer land. Something in you is withdrawing. This is the first rebellion. Not the kind that screams or burns things down, the kind that happens in silence, when your inner life refuses to be dressed up as a job title. You might still show up, still reply, still wear the mask for a while, but it feels thinner now, less convincing, even to you. There's a subtle sacredness in this disengagement, because what looks like detachment from the outside may actually be the first sign of alignment on the inside, a refusal to keep playing dead. You're lucid, and the system doesn't know what to do with lucidity. It was built on compliance, routine, repetition. But awareness disrupts all of that, so you start to feel like a stranger in your own life. The clothes don't fit, the language sounds foreign, the rituals, commuting, responding, smiling, feel like echoes of a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. This is what mystics meant when they spoke of initiation. A quiet cracking in the middle of the ordinary, a breakdown in a conference room, a moment of stillness in a parking lot where you suddenly know, I can't keep doing this. It's not that you need to quit today, it's not about escape, it's about attention. Because something in you is already leaving, the part of you that once agreed to all of this without question. You don't need a new plan right now. You just need to listen and trust to the ache, to the boredom that's no longer numbing you, to the part of you that still remembers something freer, something truer, something that never needed a resume to exist. This rebellion won't make sense to most people. That's okay. It's not for them. It's for the part of you that's been waiting quietly, patiently, for you to notice that you were never meant to belong to systems that cannot see your depth. Maybe the system won't change. Maybe it was never meant to. Its purpose was never to nourish, but to organize, to optimize, to keep the wheels turning, even when no one remembers why. But that doesn't mean you have to disappear inside it, because now you've seen it differently. Not just as a job, a role, a paycheck, but as a mirror that reflects what no longer fits, what you've outgrown, what your soul quietly refuses to sacrifice any longer. The dissonance you feel each morning isn't a flaw in your character. It's a signal, a pulse of truth flickering beneath the routine, a reminder that something real still lives in you, even if the world has forgotten how to name it. You don't need to escape your life today, but you can stop blaming yourself for the ache, because the ache is intelligent, and maybe that's all this moment is asking for. Not a revolution, not a resignation letter, just a pause, just a breath deep enough to feel what's been buried under deadlines and duties. Because sometimes the first step toward freedom, it's recognition. You were meant to be and feel alive and not just efficient. So let the system be what it is. Let it keep its roles, its scripts, its hollow incentives. And you? You listen to the part of you that still feels, still questions, still aches. What if everything that drains you isn't trying to defeat you, but to wake you? Stay with that question. Let it haunt you, hold you, guide you. Because sometimes the soul doesn't speak in words, it speaks in discomfort. And the discomfort is the door. If this video resonates with you, please subscribe and keep walking with those who feel it too. And if you've ever felt the ache we spoke of, tell me in the comments what your soul is no longer willing to trade. Thanks for watching.